review group looking at whether to decriminalise cannabis in the UK has been set up by London Mayor Sadiq Khan. He's been visiting a cannabis farm in LA where the Class B drug has been legal since 2016.
What we want to do is get a group of experts, health experts, community experts, legal experts and others to look at the law around cannabis. We're not talking about Class A drugs. What we do know is at the moment with cannabis being criminal, huge sorts of health implications, huge sorts of implications with young people being criminalised.
The first ever London Drugs Commission will look at what the existing laws on cannabis are and make recommendations to the government. Well, it's going to be chaired by Lord Charlie Falconer. A parliamentary report found the main drug offence recorded in England and Wales last year was possession of cannabis. But Labour said in a statement the party does not support changing the law on drugs. And Home Secretary Priti Patel said the Mayor of London was wasting his time as he has no powers to legalise drugs. Well, joining me now is Katya, Kowalski, the head of operations at Volteface, which is a think tank researching alternatives to current drug policies. Thank you ever so much for joining us. What's your reaction to today's announcement?
Thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. I think the news today is it's a really positive and progressive step forward. I think it's clear that Sadiq Khan wants to have an open and honest conversation about drug policy and cannabis policy specifically. And I think the announcement, it indicates that there's an interest in exploring alternatives to what we have now. And there's an acknowledgement that what we're doing right now isn't working and it's not fit for purpose. So I think the fact that Khan is looking to understand, how we can best reduce harm, how we can protect young people, take a more health-based approach towards our cannabis policies, and tackle crime it's really positive.
What are the issues currently with UK drug policies at the moment?
I think there's kind of three key pillars that are kind of key issues around UK drug policy, and kind of with that said, three reasons why we should look towards legalizing cannabis. One of which is the approach we have right now doesn't take a health-based approach towards drug use and addiction. It criminalizes people for consuming and using drugs, which doesn't get to the root cause of why someone might be in possession or using a substance. It also doesn't protect children or young people. Obviously, with a legal regulated market like alcohol or tobacco, it keeps it out of reach of children and young people, whereas dealers don't check IDs, and there's obviously lots of evidence around the fact that using cannabis under the age of 18 can have detrimental effects on development. And the third reason is it gives money and power to criminal gangs. So legalizing and regulating something like cannabis, would take that power away.
What about what some doctors warn of, a link between cannabis and developing psychosis? Wouldn't legalising it mean more people start taking it up, and those concerns that you've just raised there could also be a factor?
Yeah, I mean, the whole cannabis psychosis link is definitely something that needs considering, and obviously no drug use goes without harm, but I think keeping it illegal only feeds that harm more. The link between cannabis and psychosis, and that link between mental health problems and using cannabis is much higher when you use it as a child in your kind of young years. So keeping that away from children, having a legal regulated market could certainly prevent that. I also think that obviously having a legal regulated market allows people to feel more comfortable to seek help and to seek treatment. There's statistics that around 1 in 10 people that use cannabis go on to have a problematic relationship with that drug. So that's 9 out of 10 people on average use the drug non-problematically, much like alcohol perhaps. But obviously legalizing the substance would allow for greater transparency and kind of bringing those people in to get help from treatment services.
But it won't stop drugs in general, will it? It will only stop one aspect of it.
Yeah, but I mean, right now what we're seeing is, it's not like drug use has been stopped by keeping the substance illegal. If anything, it's perpetuating more dangerous use. Obviously, a lot of the harms that we see with cannabis nowadays are linked to the fact that it's prohibited, and its legal status makes it more dangerous because we don't know what's in the substance. There's it's being bred to have, very high levels of THC, whereas if you were to regulate the substance, you'd be able to control how much THC and CBD is in a substance to make it safer and, reduce harm.
What's the public support like for the legalizing of cannabis?
It's really strong and it's continuing to increase. YouGov polling, I think earlier this year, found that 52% of the UK public would support the legalization of cannabis. This is higher in the capital, so in London, and the only kind of age group that's more against than in favor is people over the age of 65. So we're definitely seeing a shift towards, public opinion being quite strong. And I think we're definitely seeing a discrepancy between what the public want and what politicians think the public want. So Priti Patel's reaction and the Labour Party's reaction, government officials, they're clearly kind of out of touch with what the public are actually interested in seeing.
Although, interestingly enough, Priti Patel has been very clear that the mayor has no powers to legalise drugs. So in a way, It's almost a fool's game, isn't it?
I don't think so, because what the mayor set out to do with this commission, it doesn't have the kind of purpose of legalizing cannabis. It's looking at the evidence, and obviously, once evidence is collated, a sensible policy can be put in place. So what this commission is looking to do is to look at how we can learn from jurisdictions that have legalized cannabis and understand what has worked and what hasn't worked, and come up with a sensible policy off the back of that. So I think seeing Priti Patel's reaction to this shows the kind of bias and stigma just against cannabis for the sake of it being cannabis. Sadiq Khan's clearly stated, I think we should wait to see what the research and what the evidence suggests and then make an educated and kind of evidence-based approach to policy off the back of that.
Katya, thank you very much for joining us. That's Katya Kowalski, who's the head of operations at Volteface, which is a think tank researching alternatives to current drug policies. And I will be continuing